Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Soulful Abundance Festival. I'm your host, Elise Preston, founder of Be More Connected, and today I am so thrilled to be here with the wonderful Reina Prado. Welcome.
Hi, everyone. Blessings. I'm so happy to be here with you all.
Yes, we're so grateful to have you. And Reina is a bilingual, bicultural, love conscious coach and holistic energy practitioner known as Healing Queen. And their practice reflects their lineage, many of who are midwives, herbalists, and among them, modern energy modality healers that are very experienced in their signature offering of the Love Limpias. Through energy healing and ancestral teachings, they guide folks to understand the underlying causes of feeling disempowered in their lives. By clearing out limiting beliefs about love and inviting transformation to emerge, clients become well-resourced and reclaim their connection to love as an expansive force in their lives. They also work with plant medicine and crystals in alignment with the moon cycles. They currently offer workshops and sessions at Minka in Brooklyn, New York, but mostly through the Angels in Culver City, California, and Rainbow Soul Collective in Massachusetts. You can also listen to their amazing podcast, Activating Divine Love, and guided meditations on their SoundCloud page. So welcome, Reina. I'm so excited to be able to have a really deep and rich conversation with you today about all of the amazing modalities that you weave so beautifully into your work. And I'd love to be able to start off by allowing our audience to get to know you a bit better and exploring your own journey of healing and how you found your way to the work that you're doing in the world today.
Absolutely. It's very interesting how we arrive where we're at. And sometimes it's a conscious choice, and sometimes you are led by spirit or dragged, depending how you feel about it. And I think for me personally, there's two moments. So one moment is when I wrote the poem to this saint that I created, and her name is Santa Perversa. She's the patron saint of everything erotic, sensual, and love. And in that poem, there's a prayer. And essentially the prayer is, free us of unhealthy loves, give us your gifts of seduction and endless nights of insatiable ecstasy. And so when I published that poem in 1998, friends and people would tell me, oh yeah, I prayed to Santa Perversa. I'm like, wow, that's really interesting. What happened? Like, tell me, how did that go? And they would just, share their adventures, how it was going on in their love. Many folks got, engaged, got married, had babies, had fun. So I was like, wow, I should be praying to Santa Perversa, because I too was seeking my divine match, right? So all the stuff that I offer, it's work that I've done myself. But when I established my practice full time in 2018, I had to really think about, well, what do I do? And so it was one of those questions, you're figuring out your mission statement, you're figuring out what you're doing. And I remembered, wow, I've actually been doing Love Limpias through Santa Perversa that started in 98. And here we are like 20 years later, where I was like, okay, I do Love Limpias. I actually help you like clear out what's in the heart space. And that's how we start the conversation. It's like, what are you ready to call in? And what are you ready to allow transform or release, right? And that's the experience of the Love Limpia. So it becomes a conversation. We do some guided experience, and arrive at a place where you have more clarity about where we're going and maybe what was at the root of not allowing you to fully embrace love. The other moment was when I was finishing my dissertation in Washington, D.C. I had a fellowship at the Smithsonian. And while I was living in Washington, I met these incredible folks. Many of them are still dear friends of mine. And many of them were energy practitioners, Reiki, yoga, polarity, and other modalities. And I was like fascinated. I was like, wow, there's something that you are doing that I'm very curious about, but I don't know yet. And so when I returned from DC, I was not fully here. I was still working through a dissertation that I wasn't in it. I wasn't in it anymore. I had got everything that I wanted out of it, that whole experience. And so I received a session from a dear friend of mine who's also my mentor. And in that session, I shared, I'm really interested in working with things about the head, but I don't know what it's called. Like my Google searches are not giving me any hit, like what that would be.
Mm.
And it was not massage. And they're like, oh, yeah, you should go to the school I went to, Life Energy Institute. They do cranial sacral work. And so in that moment, I was like, wait, you know what I'm talking about? And there's the school. So in 2013, I enrolled in my first cranial sacral class with Gary Strauss.
Mm.
And it was very curious because that week before my class, they do weekend classes. I got into a car accident with my mom and we got T-boned. And so I was in much pain because I was driving. So I got hit. And it's that kind of thing where your mind tells you, you can't do this. You're hurt. You shouldn't go. And my spirit was like, no, you need to get yourself over there. You can still drive. You can still go. Like, you're good. And that weekend, because the training is all hands-on, I was like, if I walk away this weekend with no pain, I'm all in. And I did. And that's how it started. So my training hands-on started in 2013.
Yes.
But the work has already been with me. And my ancestors have already been with me through that work and have been like, okay, Reina, here it goes. Okay, Reina. And so it's picking it up and listening, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
That constant process of tuning in and listening and just allowing the support from your ancestors, the support from your soul and your spirit to be a guiding force. And
Absolutely.
love to be able to learn a bit more and hear a bit more about your relationship and your connection with your ancestors and how that informs the work that you do.
Yeah. So when I started the training, I felt a presence, and I always thought it was my great grandmother because they were a midwife. So in my head, it was her. But in fact, it was further back. And this is something I learned a few years ago doing my own work with a local practitioner, Caitlin Grana Watsberg, who is of Spirit Garden Tarot. And doing work with them, my ancestors and my spirit guides started showing up and saying, this is who I am. And so it started with one who I call my Nana. And she's been with me from the beginning of my training. And another ancestor has come up. Their name is Maria de los Santos. And she openly shared, we do the same thing. We do limpias. And so there's this beautiful story that I'm writing about her sharing her practice of making brooms and how she shared that with me. And so for me, it's inherent of my daily practice. So having my ancestral altar, speaking with them, making offerings and connecting with them. And so that when I work in the garden, work with my plants, it's that constant communication, and it's very fluid for me. So sometimes it's checking in with one, making sure I'm speaking to the one that I need to speak with, that they're the one showing up, and learning their way of communicating and connecting with me. And also connecting with my spirit guides through just daily connections with the oracle deck and just receiving that message. And most recently I've added light language, and it's a way that I communicate with my soul. And so through that, it was really potent and really powerful, because even as I think about it, I'm getting emotional about it. But I was in the Midwest, and I went to go see the Cahokia Mounds that are in Illinois. And the structure of the mounds are very similar to the pyramids in Teotihuacan.
Wow.
And so going to the mounds, I intentionally took my offerings
Mhm.
and spoken light language, just to
Wow.
pray at each of the directions, at each of the sites. And it was really moving for me. Yeah.
Yes.
So it can be something so personal that you do on the daily, right? Or even inconsequential, right? Like you're like just talking to your relatives.
Just chatting. Yeah.
And and then also so deeply moving to be at a
Mm.
site where you could feel it.
Ah,
Yeah.
wow. I'm just so moved by the beautiful way in which you are in such deep connection and deep relationship with your ancestors and your spirit guides. And as you said, like welcoming in and allowing there to be that more like light, daily, playful, just
Yeah.
relationship and like meeting each other. Um, and that it can also take the form and take the shape of those like just beautiful, powerful, transformational mind, body, spirit
Absolutely. Absolutely.
that stay with you and resonate deeply, as we can see, like, whew, just moving through your whole system.
Yeah. Yeah. It's beautiful. And you know, it's um I would say that for me to arrive where I'm at, it took a while to trust.
Mm,
It took a while to trust.
sure.
Yeah. Because you're like, am I doing it right? Is am I hearing it right?
Mm,
Right. And so it took a while to trust. And so it's been really great to work with Caitlin and also to work with Asia of Spirit House Collective and and just it feels like a remembrance.
ooh,
That's really what it is. It feels like a remembrance because your
wow.
soul already has this info,
Mm, such a good
right? It already has it. So you're just kind of tapping in. You're like, oh yeah, recall. It's recall. It's retrieving, and it's making it more lively and more present in your day to day,
yeah.
right? Um, so it just becomes a way to communicate and to be in harmony with nature, with earth, with all life, right? Plant life, animal life. Um, so yeah.
Are there any pieces of guidance that you would share with listeners who maybe are just starting their relationship with their soul, with their spirit guides, with their ancestors, how to approach that when, as you described, sometimes it might feel just unknown, unfamiliar. Those questions might pop up like, am I doing this right? Is
Right.
there any words of wisdom you
Yeah.
can share?
I would share to start first with just it seems really simple, but actually it is.
Mm,
And that in your if you are in a practice of meditation
mm,
or even prayer, that you open the door to your benevolent ancestors
mm,
and say, who wants to come first?
mm,
Just like that.
yeah.
It could be out loud, it could be in your mind, but really specifically calling in your benevolent ancestors, because not all our ancestors are benevolent.
Mm,
And we have to be careful. We still have to be careful, right?
for
So
sure.
just, and then also I think it's important to practice protection for yourself so
Mm,
that before you call them in to really, a beautiful practice that I learned from Shanice Burrell is to imagine this beautiful pink light coming out of your heart space and protecting you,
mm,
right? And that to
beautiful.
really declare out loud, only my energy can be in my body and my field. I always do only my energy can be my body and my field, but I love adding that pink light. I think it's just something really beautiful. It could be any color light you want.
Sure.
Um, and being very clear that only your energy can be in your body and your field. And then inviting the benevolent ancestor who wants to show, wants to share, and ask their name, introduce yourself. right? And it might feel like you're only hearing it in your head, and yeah, you are.
Yeah.
Yes, you are. And you might notice physical sensations, right? So maybe this ancestor only talks to you on the left side of your body or on the right
Mm,
side of your body, right? And so just making notes of where do you feel it, where do you hear it, right? And creating that communication where you say, well, what's a yes and what's a no?
mm,
Bring in your other tools. You could bring a pendulum
right.
and be like, is this a yes, right? And just allow the am I hearing so and so, and allow the pendulum to say yes or no, right? um and that's how you could begin with your ancestors, and similarly with your spirit guides. And for those of you who are gifted with sight, like you could see, then notice those qualities and those textures, the shapes, the light, the color,
Mm,
right? For some folks, it's really hearing it. And there might be a tone that you hear or a sound that you hear, right? And so each one will start to become their own, I mean, they are their own entity, and you'll be able to discern who's who.
mm. Oh, beautiful.
Yeah,
I so appreciate you breaking that down and just giving some practices for people to try on and experiment with in their own spiritual practice.
absolutely, absolutely. And you'll find your way. You'll find what works for you.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's so many great, folks out there, so many great teachers, and you'll find your way, like to one of them, to many of them, and you'll find what works for you.
Mm.
I think that's so important because we get so caught up on, is it right?
Mm.
And it's right because it's your way.
Yes. There is no wrong.
There really isn't. And they will speak to you in the way that you can receive it.
Mhm.
Some of them, don't have language, but they'll speak
Mm.
to you in the way that you can receive it. Right.
Yes.
So yeah.
So powerful. And so I would love now to be able to transition into diving deeper into your work as it relates to love and joy
Yes.
and living a more heart-led life. And so in your own work and in your own practice, I'm curious to hear about and to know, what do you see as some of the key factors that may not let us amplify our joy?
Honestly, it's because we believe we need to earn it.
Mhm.
Quite simply. We forget that we are entitled to all of that.
Yes.
And so once we start to dismantle a way of being that says, I have to earn it, I have to be worthy of it, then we are more capable to embrace and receive all of that joy, all of that abundance.
Yes.
But it's about, that would be the one thing. That would be the one thing, is
And
to really get that it's not an earned, it's not something you earn, it's something that you already are entitled to.
yes. And that in and of itself is such a huge paradigm shift from how most of us have been conditioned to think and to operate.
Absolutely. And it starts really innocently
Mm.
when we're kids. Don Miguel Ruiz will tell us, in his writings, that it starts with, our parents or our grandparents telling us, if you do this, you'll get this. And so from very young age, we believe, if I do this, I will get this. So I have to work for it. I have to earn it. I have to be good. I have to please X, Y, and Z. And so as adults, we continue doing that.
Continue
It
that.
gets more complicated when we're adults, but really at the heart of it, it's that. At the heart of it is that. Yeah. And so for me to think about a more heart-led life that is joyful is to be
Yes.
like the hummingbird. The
Mm.
hummingbird, and that's part of one of the pieces that I do with the Hummingbirds Map, is really to introduce folks on how to create that more joyful heart-led life. And we go a little deeper in the group coaching with Amate and Alchemy of True Self. But with the Hummingbird's map, it's understanding the hummingbird's goal is only to pursue the sweetness.
Yeah.
It's to pursue the nectar. That is its only premise, right? And it's so beautiful in that, right? We love it. We find great joy seeing a hummingbird, seeing its colors.
Yes.
And it's very determined, right? It will protect it. I mean, violently, actually, right? Don't get to my nectar. This is my honeypot.
Right.
And it's like, sometimes we have to remember, we have to protect our honeypot, right? We have to protect our sweetness as well. And so when we start with the hummingbird's map, you know, you could just start illustrating your life's journey, right? Including those deep valleys, those spaces that feel like shadows. And you can start with, you know, a blank sheet of paper and just imagine your life. And you can start at any point. You don't have to start from childhood, right?
Sure.
And so as you start to illustrate map, you know, it could show the valleys, it could show the peaks, it could show the moment that maybe felt like the dark night of the soul for you. And just as you start to, you know, doodle, really. And when you feel you're done and you're at where you're at, you could start identifying, what are those peaks? What were those peaks for me? Well, I felt like a shadow. You already know those moments.
Right.
You could pinpoint them, right? And then find the one that gets you closest to where you're at. Which one brought you here? Because it is in those moments that felt, I don't know, you had no way out. You found your way and you got closer to who you are, which allows you to live that heart-led life because you lived to what is true to you, to what is true to your soul, right? And finding those peaks and valleys and identifying the moment that got you closer to where you're at, you realize, oh, actually, I did find my way.
Yes.
And those were just detours or distractions, right? But you needed to go through something like that because you weren't listening. Your guides, your soul, your spirits, your benevolent ancestors are speaking to you constantly.
Right.
And sometimes, you know, there's something that Carolyn Miss shared in one of their talks where sometimes we're so determined to go after something and it becomes a no. Every time you go for it, it's always a no. And we're still so stubborn going for it that we don't stop to think, maybe it wasn't meant for us.
Right.
Right. And we get so caught up on the shoulds. Or I must. I should and I must. And it's like, no, actually, yeah, we get so attached to those ideals, right? And it's like, well, actually, what if I follow my joy? What if? And what does that open up for me when I do that? Right.
Right.
And what if I follow my joy and it's not so heartbreaking? Right? What if I follow my joy and it's not so heartbreaking? And what if I actually live from this premise? And that gets us to this notion that you shared of the soulful abundance. Because we're already abundant.
Yes.
We are already abundant. But if I start from this premise, then it starts to become easier to say yes to what is aligned and to say no to what is not aligned. And when we make the choice to say yes to those no's, we are making a compromise. And now that's a conscious choice. Right?
Right.
Because often we're operating unconsciously.
Oh, yeah. Most of the day, our mind is operating unconsciously.
And that's where all the habits come in. That's where all the, like, you know, it's on default mode. It doesn't have to think about it. It just does it. The moment we catch it, the moment we become aware and create those conscious connections, we can make the shift. And, you know, at this moment, if you're not ready to do the full 180, then start with 1 degree. 1 degree. right? In astrology, 1 degree is a huge impact.
Yes.
You know, if we just start with 1 degree, that's it.
That's
Start
all
there.
I do. And I just am in love with this modality of the Hummingbird Map and feel like it gives us this beautiful perspective and view of our lives that allows us to welcome in more curiosity, but also just more grace and acceptance and inspiration for the multidimensionality and non-linearity of our journey, right? Because
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. A hummingbird, if you were literally to track a hummingbird and how it goes from flower to flower, it's not
yes,
linear. It
at
is not.
all.
Yeah.
Yes. And so there is something that is so beautiful about being able to have a practice or a tool that we can return to that can support us in following our joy, expanding into the unknown, understanding that those musts and those shoulds actually are blocking us or preventing us from being able to maybe access or weave into more aligned opportunities and connections and resources or experiences that we may not be able to see in our own limited perspective when we're trying to control or force or muscle ourselves into certain things. And so that invitation of just starting with 1 degree, I love that because it keeps it so manageable and so accessible for all of us that it's actually not possible for any of us to see the entire road ahead and know every step that's going to come along the way, but we can tune into our soul, tune into the messages that we're receiving, and find what is that just one next aligned action step that's going to allow us to create some forward movement and move in a direction that feels good for us. And that's all that we need to do.
That's it. That's it. Because so many of us are don't take that step precisely because we need to know, will it work?
Yes.
And actually, you won't know.
You won't
right?
know.
It's chicken and the egg. You won't know. You won't know until you try it. You won't know until you go there. And if you have a sense of, well, what's the outcome that I want to achieve? What's the outcome I want to experience? Okay, I know where my endpoint is, but I don't need to know the path that gets me there.
Huge.
Because you might be surprised how quickly you get there.
Yes.
Often I tell clients when they come see me for a Love Limpia, and one of the things that they're wanting to call in as their divine match, I ask them, I go, if you were to walk outside of my office, would you recognize your divine match by their energy? And they're like, no. I'm like, well, then you need to be clear about what you're calling in. And if you're not, what kind of characteristics, what kind of values, what's the feeling you want to have around this person? Right. And you get more clarity on that. It's easier to recognize them. It's easier to see, oh, actually, I'm curious about you. I don't know if it's a yes yet, but I'm definitely curious about you.
There's something here.
And you go and explore, right? I mean, for me personally, that's how it worked out with my partner. Yeah. I was very clear what I wanted. And when I met them, I was like, oh, you're curious. You'll be fun. And then in more deeper conversation, I was so very surprised. I was like, wow, you actually, like, if I were to go through my list, all the things that I was really calling in got checked off.
Wow.
And I was like, wow, okay. And then I got scared. I was like, no way, they showed up.
Now what?
But I went for it. I still went for it. And here we are 10 years later.
Oh, so gorgeous. And I would love if you could share a little bit more information about the Love Limpias and the ways in which that modality can support people with expanding the levels of conscious love in their own lives.
Yeah, absolutely. So we go through a lot of clearing, really. And the clearing happens quick because we're working with quantum energy. So sometimes we go back to childhood, or we go back to maybe a most recent heartbreak experience. And it's really understanding what's at the root of that experience. What makes it take up space energetically in your body and in your field. Because the thing that happens is that we notice it in our body, and by the time we notice it in our body, it has already impacted our spiritual body, our mental body, and our emotional body.
Wow.
And we only pay attention to it when it comes into our physical body. If we're lucky, if we're connected. Many of us have not been able to connect to our bodies because of other trauma.
Yes.
And so we address it in the physical body, and then make our journey through all those other levels.
Yes.
With the guided experience.
Wow.
But I always ask my clients, what are you ready to call in, and what are you ready to allow transform? And maybe we release it, but at least allow that transformation. Allow that energy to transform into something else that can help you be more connected to the love that you're calling in, right? Yes. And mostly it's really truly about love of self. We think it's about our love for, finding a partner and whatnot. But when you come to really loving yourself fully, in your wholeness, in this beautiful, complex, and as you shared, multidimensional way, and really just enjoying all of those aspects of ourselves, it's easier for you to amplify your vibration, and your divine match starts to match that vibration.
Yes. That allows you to amplify your own innate essence and vibration, which can then magnetize more of that beautiful match to you.
Absolutely. Magnetize. Yes. 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 That's a great way of putting it. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And sometimes, people may not be like, how to put it? It's not always have to be an equal. It's a complement. Right? Sometimes we think it has to be like match. No, it's a complement.
Sure.
Because it's honoring and respecting what their energy is, what they bring to it too. Because it's both of you, and what you bring to them. Right?
100%. And I love that, because I think one of the most frequent things that I hear from clients and community members when stepping into that space of making yourself vulnerable, connecting with new people, seeking out relationship, is that we often are searching for someone who is a match for us in terms of mirroring back and reflecting the things that we know and understand about ourselves, or that we feel are the qualities that we really enjoy and love most about ourselves, which can be fun to like connect and relate to folks in that way, because you have that level of friendship or understanding each other related to certain things. But oftentimes the folks who actually can help us to grow and expand and learn about new dimensions of ourselves are people who can highlight and bring in those aspects of things that are quite different from us, that create that sense of polarity, but that our energies are in support of each other, and allowing just like love and expansiveness to be shared between each other.
Absolutely. And when we can be in that space of neutrality with ourselves and with our partners, or with our family members or coworkers, it helps to create space. And really, that's what we're doing, is creating space, creating the space to be, creating the space to hold all of that love, to hold all of that joy, right? To hold all of that harmony. And often we are so constricted. And I think we shared earlier, like we want to control the outcome. Right. And control is constriction. And if you just breathe it out and let it be more open, more fluid, can you, I mean, even just right now, right? It's like, I'm sure our viewers are just like,
Right.
right?
Maybe
They
like
just felt
stomping
like
their jaw.
something, just something
Woo.
it feels so simple, but
Yeah,
it is. It
it's
really
huge.
is. It really is. It's huge, and it can make such a big impact. And so, to allow the space to be messy,
Mm,
we have to be messy. I
yeah.
mean, it's not always like, you know, like I feel like a Snow White moment, right? It's not always like the birds singing and like rainbows and butterflies, right? Sometimes it gets messy. Yes,
Mm,
absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely. And to allow for the messiness. But
right.
again, the key thing is that you're neutral, or your partner can be neutral, or the person who you're with can be in neutrality, so that it can allow for the messiness to have its flow, to have its energy,
Mm,
and we come back to neutral,
yes.
you know?
I think that that messiness is so needed and so necessary for us to be able to be vulnerable and just experience each other in those messy ways. And I know that that is one of the things that I struggle or like have struggled with the most in the current relationship that I'm in now. I've been with my partner for about 2 years, and I, being a recovering like perfectionist and people pleaser, it was very hard for me to like allow myself to open up in that way and let those messy parts of myself be seen, or let myself like really go there with things that I don't like, and being able to have that like generative conflict around things. And so I just really appreciate that you welcomed that in, because in my own personal practice, that's definitely something that feels still like stretchy and a growth edge for me, and something that I'm exploring in my own relationships, even not just with my romantic partner, but just with anyone, right? Like with my clients or with my friends, it's like, how do we really allow each other to see all parts of ourselves, and knowing that all parts are welcome and worthy and beautiful, not just like the picture perfect parts.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's one of the things I've shared with clients is, the perfectionism is not in aligned with our integrity.
Right.
Integrity is really the aim,
Mm,
right? And when we are able to be that in our integrity, the perfectionism goes to the wayside.
yes.
But often we think our perfectionism is integrity, or
Mm,
integrity must be perfect,
sure.
right? And so when we can ease on that perfectionism, because that perfectionism is coming from the space of our mind, of the shoulds, of the musts, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, can we just allow for this moment to what needs to be supported just in this moment?
Yeah.
And actually, I had that experience a few weeks ago doing a reflection in one of my classes, and when I wrote the word I should blank, right? And I noticed my body like just tightening up. And I was like, okay, well, how can I shift this?
Yeah.
And then I wrote, well, how can I best support myself
Mm,
around this? And
yeah.
that just gave space, right? Because now it was like, okay, there are different ways I can support myself, that is not just the one, the should, the perfect.
Oh,
And we when we can do that in the moment, that's where the change starts to happen. And then
wow.
we can implement for ourselves new practices, new ways of thinking, new ways of being, that
Mm,
again get us more aligned to that flow of that soulful abundance.
yes. Love that. And that reminder of just feeling into the ways that we can start practicing that in the moment, and allowing that to be something that is often really challenging, but that we can continue to strengthen our trust with ourselves, and strengthen our ability to lean more into those new ways of being.
Absolutely, absolutely. Trust. Ah, there it is again, right?
Yeah.
Trust. Yeah. And trusting that the other person can meet you.
Yes.
Often that's where I think part of the vulnerability is to allow ourselves to be open that the other can meet us.
Yes. So powerful. And I'd love to hear about what maybe are some of your current growth edges or new things that you're exploring in your life and spiritual practice.
Yeah, I think for me, an aspect of that is to actually share my work more publicly in circles that are not familiar to me.
Sure.
So even doing this right now is part of that growth edge.
I love it.
And to publish and to publish my work as well.
So exciting.
That feels big to me.
Yes. And so as we start to draw our interview to a close, I'd love to ask you the question that I ask all of our guests, which is, what does soulful abundance mean to you?
This is for me like so beautiful in that the soulful abundance is for me very similar of aligning your heart to your higher self. Because when we do, for me, the soulful abundance is really about like that flow.
Yeah.
And as we connect to that flow, we are able to then experience the abundance in all areas of our life. It includes not just money, not just finances, but also our love, our health, abundant relationships. And to do so, it's having that open communication with your soul.
Yes.
And acting accordingly.
Love that definition. And I am so grateful for the opportunity to share space with you today and feel like I was able to just soak in and receive so much medicine from this conversation. And I'm sure that our audience is going to feel the same. And so would love if you could share how our audience can best stay connected with you.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure to be with you. A few ways to connect with me is through Instagram at Healing Queen _ at the end. And through my Linktree, you can have all the most access to my most current programs and workshops through the Linktree / Healing Queen. And on the Linktree, you can connect to my SoundCloud page or to my YouTube. And so those are the most effective ways to connect with me. And my website has more details about my offerings.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much again, Reina, for joining us. I'm so grateful for all of the wisdom that you shared with us today. And for everyone tuning in, I'm so looking forward to staying engaged and connected with you throughout the course of our summit. Be well, everyone.
Blessings.